Hello everyone, Floppy Waffles 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we will be continuing our Down the Line series. This time we are at the Tier 8, the Edinburgh. What is the Edinburgh, and do I think it is a good ship? This is what I'm going to say about the Edinburgh, guys. I think the Edinburgh has the potential to be a really good ship if in the right situations and in the right hands. This ship is capable. The problem is, I think a lot of people don't understand that there is quite a big step up between Tier 7 and Tier 8, and I haven't talked about this in a while. I believe there are 3 major step-ups in this game. One at Tier 5, one from Tier 7 to 8, and then one, obviously, to Tier 9 to 10. Okay, I think these are the 3 major step-ups in this game, and this is the stage, I guess, 2 of 3 of the major step-ups, and you're going to be going against better ships, better players. There's a lot of better things going on here, not to mention Tier 8 aircraft carriers, Tier 8 submarines, and God forbid you get +2, -2 matchmaker where you're going up against Tier 10s of those ships. Tier 8 is where a lot of the ship's gimmicks come to life. Now, what do I mean by that? Super heals become more prominent on certain nations and ships, depending on what nation you're playing. Radar becomes standardized at Tier 8, so looking at you, USN cruisers, looking at you, Soviet cruisers, that sort of stuff, of the split, right? Ships' gimmicks really start going full force here at Tier 8. This is where you really start seeing those gimmicks come alive, and I think that is why everyone has the stigma that the Edinburgh is not a very good ship, because it's an introduction to all that. You're kind of getting thrown in. You know, you go from a ship so strong such as the Fiji, which is really loved and really powerhouse down at Tier 7, and you go into Tier 8, and it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment / transition period that at least I find when I play my Edinburgh. Sometimes I'm just not ready for the slower turret traverse. Sometimes I'm not ready for the elongated hull. Sometimes I'm not ready for the massive citadel that is on this thing. We're going to get to that in just a bit. But anyways, I don't want to go into too much talking about the ship because we have a long video here. I'm actually going to be showing you 2 battles here in the Edinburgh, so I want to make sure that I cover all the information I want to cover here in the port analysis, and then I'll go ahead and show you some gameplay while going over tips and tricks like I always do in my Down the Line series. So anyways, let's get on into it like we always do and start with that armor layout. Looking at the Edinburgh's armor layout, we actually still have that 16mm nose and that 16mm NAS. Now, why is that a bit of a doozy? Well, because basically 230mm guns and higher can go ahead and overmatch your nose and ass, and that can be a bit of a problem when you start to realizing just how prominent those ships are. We're looking at like ships like the Drake. The Cheshire, I believe, also has 234mm guns. Looking at ships like the Aegir you're going to be going against, the Congress, the Alaska. These ships you will see more and more frequently, and those are just cruisers. Not to mention every and all battleship caliber size gun that you will be fighting against can overmatch you as well. This is something you've kind of seen throughout the line and something you've kind of gotten used to, I think, as of, late in regards of grinding this line. But now you have not seen anything yet until you've gotten to Tier 8. Again, kind of another reason why I think people, when they first get to the Edinburgh, are a little bit disappointed. And I really think it has to do with what you are fighting now at Tier 8. There is that big power spread now between Tier 7 and Tier 8, and a lot of people are just not ready for that jump. Again, we strip away some armor layout and we go ahead and see the Citadel. Now, we do not have the infamous Step Citadel yet. That is coming. Don't worry. The Neptune and Minotaur have you covered, but we do have still a massive Citadel that spans the length of the ship from that number 1 turret here all the way down to the number 4 turret as well. So again, you're going to have to be careful when showing broadside because it can and absolutely will get punished. Moving into our survivability, 36,400 HP. Again, it's a light cruiser. What are you going to do? I mean, you do have a heel, which is good, which, speaking of the heel, it's no longer just a standard heel. You actually do get an improved, or what I like to call it, what they call it actually, is a super heel, which thank God we finally have, which is going to allow you to heal back more HP quicker and allow you to heal back even more Citadel damage, which I believe is it 10% standard, and now it goes up to 33 or 50%. I think it's 50%, right? Again, I have to check the numbers here for you guys, but I just know that you're going to be able to heal back more HP even when you do get Citadel. Now, this isn't a green light to go ahead and show flat broadside because, hey, fuck it, I can eat Citadels and I can heal it back. No, 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 no. Don't do that, because you will find out that all it takes is really one good place salvo and you're pretty much out of the game. So you still have to be cautious and know where the enemy threats are, especially now, not only battleships, but those larger gun cruisers as well. Moving into the artillery, the 4x3 152mm guns. The reload time on these guns is 7.5 seconds, and your 180-degree turn time is 25.7 seconds. Now, I want to talk about the 180-degree turn time. For me, this is quite noticeable. Your turrets do turn fairly slow on this ship, so you're going to have to keep that in mind, especially when you get in close and personal with enemy ships. Not that you really want to, I'm just saying if you do find yourselves in those scenarios, I at least noticed that your turrets have a hard time, rotating to keep them to bear. So make sure you pre-plan your turrets and know where they're going to be at, or where the enemy ships are going to be at, so you know that you could get your whole broadside to bear, essentially, or, ready to be fired upon. That also being said, with this ship, the reload, like I said, is 7.5, and you can only have access to the short fused AP. I've mentioned this time and time in detail about the other ships down this line series, going back all the way to the Emerald where we started. The short fused AP basically allows you to shoot your guns and hit the enemy ship and penetrate less armor to get that full detonation, that penetration to give you a full pen. This is very nice, especially against lighter armored targets. When you start getting to heavily armored targets, you're going to start noticing some shatters, especially like, for example, like Soviet BBs. If you don't have a flat broadside and you're not relatively closer to them, which you really don't want to be, let's be honest, you're going to have a hard time doing good damage. That's why superstructure is always your friend. So you make sure you want to pinpoint that superstructure especially. And again, we don't have high explosive on this ship. That means if a ship is coming nose in on us or running away, we really have to kind of lob and land our shells on the superstructure of the enemy ship to really get those penetrations or overpens to score damage on the ship. If not, you're going to get shatters and ricochets for days. And this does apply to those destroyers too. Again, maximum range is 15.4 kilometers, and the damage on the AP is 3,100 with an initial velocity of 841 meters a second. You do have secondary batteries. Don't pay too much mind to them. They're there for the occasional fire. That's really about it. Going into the torpedo tubes, the 2x3 533mm launchers, they do reload in 72 seconds, 10-kilometer range, around 15,500 maximum damage, with a speed of 62 knots and a detectability range of 1.3 kilometers. Not bad. Again, we have the same problem with the Fiji. You really don't have the torpedo power yet that the Neptune and Minotaur have to really deter a push around a corner. You essentially have to land all three torpedoes to really do catastrophic damage to the enemy ship, especially if that ship is a battleship. If you only land one, guess what? He is still coming around and he is still going to absolutely nuke you at point blank range. So again, keep that in the back of your mind as well. Again, these are Royal Navy or UK torpedoes, so they have the option to do single launch, 1x1, or narrow spread, which again is always nice because that's theoretically going to allow us to, I guess, increase our chances of landing torpedoes on target and hit those specific spots. Again, I wouldn't recommend always using the single launch because there's a good chance that you'll just miss all your torpedoes completely. I am very guilty of doing this. So again, there is a time to do it and a time not to. And my big recommendation for you is not always utilizing your single launch torpedoes, especially if you find yourself in open ocean, which again, you really don't want to be because you're severely placed out of position at that point. Depth charges, you don't have ASW. Like we just reviewed the Aberdeen, which again, a newer ship here released in 2026. You actually have the ASW aircraft, which is always nice. You can support your allies from afar and support your allied submarines. Well, in the Edinburgh, you don't have that. You have the depth charges, which again, the depth charges are amazing if you can sail your 30 knot whatever speed cruiser over the enemy submarine and drop it on his head. If not, you're going to just have, basically rely on your guns, which again, short fuse AP relies you to hit the submarine directly. There is no splash because you do not have high explosive. There's no fragmentation involved with the HE, or sorry, with the AP here. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't kind of thing. At the end of the day, you should always try to shoot submarines, especially if they're on the surface or periscope depth. But just know you're really going to have to pinpoint your shells to land on those pesky little submarines. The AA defense of the Edinburgh. Okay, this is what I've noticed, and again, you can agree with me or disagree. The AA versus Tier 6 carriers, really good. AA versus Tier 8 carriers and higher, really, really bad. I mean, this thing cannot shoot a damn plane down to save its life. That's what I've noticed. And even if you do shoot out a plane, it doesn't matter because it's not deterring the planes at all. I mean, I got circled. I think the game I'm going to showcase to you guys, or maybe not. There was a game I played where the Shokaku just circled around me and kept doing his damn rocket planes and just took 9,000, 7,000 off me. It's like there's really nothing you can do other than the just dodge thing. It sucks, but it's something you gotta, deal with, I guess, at the Edinburgh. This does slightly change with the Neptune and the Minotaur, and again, I don't want to spoil too much of that fun. We'll get into that with the later videos here in the Down the Line series. Again, your maximum AA firing range is 5.8 with, I believe, only 5 flak bursts, which really isn't that good because, as we all know, flak is going to be that heavy hitter in regards of the damage. Maneuverability, 32.5 knots, turning circle radius of 730 meters, and rudder shift time of 7.7 seconds. Again, this is a Royal Navy light cruiser. You have the improved acceleration baked into the ship, so it's a no-brainer that you're going to be choosing the, the rudder shift mod in slot 4. It's only going to help you and further encourage you to dodge when you need to and get away with times with maneuvering shells and potentially just dodging enemy aircraft. And then we're going into the concealment. I believe with the concealment module, like I have mounted here, it gets it down to 10.2. I believe it's like 11 point something base. And again, with the commander on top of that, you get it down to 9.2 kilometers, which is nice. Firing from smoke is 5.5 kilometers, so make sure you keep that in mind as well. Now, why do I say getting your concealment down to 9.2 kilometers is very good? Well, we're going to go to the equipment, and actually we're going to pause the equipment section here for a minute and go look at the consumables. And yes, your eyes do not deceive you. That is in the 4th consumable slot, a surveillance radar consumable. You now have access to a 10-kilometer radar on this line, and in my opinion, it is the optimal way to play these ships. I think the smoke farming gimmick that you've been doing all along isn't a bad gimmick, and it's not a bad way to play the ship. The problem with the smoke firing thing is at tier 8 and higher, there's so much radar, homing torpedoes, airstrikes from the Dutch. There's so many ways to hit your cruiser with a massive citadel in that smoke screen, not to mention just blind firing you, that I think you'd be better off having the radar consumable listed or slotted in your 4th slot. Now, that's just my opinion. If you disagree with me, by all means do it. I think the smoke is the safer option. And again, it depends on your spawn and map like always, but when you have the ability to stealth the radar that the Edinburgh does, that makes it significantly more impactful in regards of team orientation, which again is huge. Okay, not to mention we do have that superhero, like I already mentioned, 728 HP a second for 20 seconds. Again, cooldown time is 80 seconds, and that number of consumables base charge is 3, so Superintendent's going to give you 4 pops. Again, you have the hydroacoustic search with detection of ships of 5 kilometers, which is awesome. Detection of torpedoes is 3.5, and again, submarine at max depth is, like always, is the 2 kilometers. But again, that radar is a nice 10-kilometer radar, 30-second action duration, and number of consumables is 3 base, so it ties that of your other consumables, okay? Now, again, when we're looking at our upgrades, I'm going to go main armaments modification 1 in the 1st slot, but here in the 2nd slot, okay, if you don't want to invest coal, engine room protection is your best friend. If you want to invest coal, I would highly encourage you to actually pick up the hydroacoustic search modification 1, because no matter what, you have hydro standardized on the ship. You can't unslot hydro from this ship. So you're always going to have that, and you're going to be benefiting by an additional plus 20% consumable action time. So in your smoke, that's going to give you plus 20% a longer duration of a hydro, which is incredibly impactful. And then also If you're running the radar, it's going to give you a little bit of a leeway when you're potentially hunting down enemy submarines in the open water, so you can see if they launch torpedoes your way. That's just my opinion. If you know that you will never, ever, ever play a smoked Edinburgh, then yes, the surveillance radar modification 1 is the optimal choice as well, because that's going to give you plus 20% action time on your radar. Getting it to, I believe, is like 40-something seconds, which again is incredibly strong. It's just one of those things that I'm trying to save you the most amount of resources. So that's, again, why I'm recommending what I'm recommending, okay? Third slot, aiming systems modification 1. Again, if you want to spend the coal and you know that you will always play a smoke Edinburgh, because you have 12 guns on the Edinburgh, you could actually, in my opinion, get away with the smoke generator modification 1, and you can see what it's going to do for you as well. It's just going to allow you to sit and deploy longer smokes and sit in that smoke for a longer time. That, coupled with if you take the hydro on the ship for plus 20% longer duration, this is a very dangerous combination. Now, you're probably asking, well, is that minus 7% noticeable? You will notice dispersion values dipping off here and there in regards of like your accuracy and consistency of your shells landing where they need to land. But because you have 12 shells, you're landing every 7.5 seconds, and more often than not, because you're not taking this, you're concealed within smoke, it really doesn't matter a whole hell of a lot in my opinion. But again, I'm still going to go ahead and recommend that aiming systems, just because it's more universal and you're going to get a lot of use out of that. Fourth slot, like I already mentioned, steering gears modification 1 is a no-brainer. And again, in the fifth slot, concealment system modification 1 is a no-brainer as well. For my captain build, I will go ahead and showcase what I have now. Again, things will change depending on the build. This was just another build that I was attempting or trying out. One thing you really do need on this thing that I actually do not have, and you will actually see a replay of me not having, is grease the gears. You need grease the gears, guys. If you don't have grease the gears, that turret traverse is incredibly painful. And then with grease the gears, you get it down to 22.4 seconds. I have attempted to use this. I tried this and I double checked on PTS. It actually is making it significantly easier to play the ship when you do take when you take the grease the gear skill. So I almost would rather not even take the incoming fire alert and take this first and just try to get your 13-point command or whatever without taking that, and just trying to utilize your mini map and situational awareness before you go ahead and rely so heavily on that incoming fire alert. But yeah, everything else is pretty self-explanatory of what I chose. And again, I will showcase a full captain build in my replays. So I don't really want to sit and talk too much about the Edinburgh here in port. So that is the port analysis portion done here with the Edinburgh. Again, I don't mind the Edinburgh. It's not my favorite ship, because my favorite ship actually in this entire line, funny enough, is the next ship in the line. And I cannot wait to go ahead and make that video for you guys, because I'll be honest with you, I'm sure the vast majority of the community hates that next ship, but I absolutely adore her, and I love her to death. But again, we're talking about the Edinburgh, and it's one of those things where I think this is a very important ship to play. Do not skip the Edinburgh, because it's going to be teaching you a lot about positioning, I feel like. And if you are attempting to utilize that radar, it's going to teach you some good things about how to position yourself and make use of that. Not only your incredible stealth, but your stealth radar capabilities. If you don't know what stealth radar is, your concealment is lower than your radar duration, or sorry, your radar range. So basically, when you get detected, go ahead and pop that radar. You can see anything in your radar range, right? Incredibly strong. But all right, that's the Edinburgh port analysis, guys. Let's go in and check out battles 1 and 2. Alrighty, guys, and here we are in our first battle with the Edinburgh. This is the smoke Edinburgh game, not the radar. I want to make sure I point that out. Also, here are the corresponding upgrades and commander skills that I will either recommend or have taken on this ship. I don't have a 21-point commander on this ship yet. I am attempting to grind that out. But yeah, that's basically what I'm going to go for as well. Again, there's a lot of skills that I've taken that are applicable to the corresponding ships before this, like the preceding ships, and the ships after as well. Again, I tried to tailor the builds to the ship specific, like the specific ship, sorry, rather than just a generic captain you can bring up with you. The reason for that is because I am not a big factor or keen. I'm not too keen essentially on selling ships. I think every ship has a purpose. Every ship is fun to go back to and play, even the ones that are painful, because it's fun to have some laughs at the end of the day, right? And that's what it's about essentially. Not all the time, but again, especially when you're playing with your buddies, definitely enjoying yourself is a fun time. But anyways, with the Edinburgh, guys. What do I like to do with my smoke farming Edinburgh? Well, like I always do, I like to slowly approach the cap, supporting my DDs, going about a quarter speed, usually when I know I'm getting closer to the essentially getting detected or enemy ship getting detected. So then I can go ahead and pop my smoke screen right away and shoot my first salvo from smoke. Again, I think I'm relatively close to my DDs. Again, about that 13, 12 kilometer range is definitely ideal. Again, you have to be careful though and know the enemy radar ships. Okay, so American radar, always going to go 10 kilometers, or if not 10, about 8.5 kilometers, depending on the ship. Soviet radar is always going to go around 12 kilometers, or 12 kilometers, excuse me. So again, if you know there's a Soviet ship on the enemy team, you maybe want to distance yourself a little bit more until that ship has been spotted across the map somewhere. So then you know where to position your ship. Again, knowing where the enemy radar is always essential, not only for your destroyers, but for you too, especially if you're running smoke, because what counteracts your smoke? The radar. So you have to be careful with that. Also, try to play it with them too, like the enemy ships, the enemy team, they don't know if you're smoke or radar. So sometimes kind of playing those mental games with them, maybe not smoking up right away, kind of have that fear for those enemy DDs that maybe they think your radar is an option too, kind of those mind games. It's kind of the game within the game that a lot of people don't really play. They just are so two-dimensional rather than really seeing the big picture, because there's definitely been some times there's been really good like Minotaur players that I know have kind of mind effed me a bit when they don't use their smoke right away, so I think they're radar, so I start retreating, and then about a minute or two later they actually do utilize their smoke, and I'm like, oh damn it, the whole time I could have been more aggressive. But you just don't know, because the Minotaur is scary. And again, it comes down to that short fused armor piercing, which again the Edinburgh has, and you will see examples of that here in both games 1 and 2, especially against enemy destroyers. I mean, realistically speaking, you only have to penetrate around, 16 to 19 millimeters of armor. That is nothing for your short fused AP. That basically almost always guarantees a penetrating armor piercing round, which again is going to do maximum damage to the enemy destroyer. So these ships, I think, are the king of killing DDs really, really quickly. Neptune, Minotaur, right? Just insane. Again, yes, I know the Venezia could theoretically one-shot you, same with the Brindisi with the 203 SAP, but I'm just speaking in regards of light cruiser terms, not heavy cruiser. And again, AP and short fused AP. So again, so that we basically have won this capture point, so I'm just going to slowly utilize island coverage and move up. Again, this is something I find when I play smoke using Edinburgh, Neptune, or Minotaur. I always find myself wanting, or in situations where radar would just be a better choice. I don't know if you guys find that same problem. It's just one of those things where if I take smoke, and especially in a situation like this where I don't really realistically know or necessarily know where the Jaeger's at, I really just wish I had that radar, because then he can't disengage. So then if I come flying around the corner and I get spotted, guess what I can do? I can go ahead and pop my radar and see where they're at. Now, again, it's one of those things that if I'm up tiered to tier 10 games, not really tier 9, but tier 10 games, yeah, I do wish I have smokescreen probably a little bit more in my Edinburgh. But again, if I am top tier, or if I find myself in a game like this where it's just against tier 9s, I actually do prefer the radar. Now again, you can't change this. You have to take whatever you're going to take before the game. It's just one of those things based upon the tier spread that I like and I find. Again, great spot here by my Halford. I know where the Jaeger is. He's going to keep him spotted. He's doing exactly what he needs to do and how to play against a Jaeger. If you have an enemy or an ally hybrid or an ally aircraft carrier, just do circles on the Jaeger. You basically neuter him his entire game if you can do that, because he has no AA essentially, other than like one little guy sitting on the deck with maybe a Luger. Like, it's hilariously bad. So just do this, and again, it allows us to have open season. Now again, the Jaeger is the floating jet ski, so it sits so low to the damn water that you have to be pretty damn meticulous with your aim. If not, you're going to miss your entire salvo. And again, the second he angles away, I start getting some ricochet, ribbons. Again, it's painful. That's why, again, I find myself missing salvos here and there like that, because I'm trying to hit his side where I know I can get those full pens. But the second he maneuvers his ship so incredibly quick like he does, and because he's such low profile, he's going to get those ricochet ribbons. This is where the short fused AP sucks. But the second he goes ahead and shows a little bit too much side, boom, the short fused AP is bomb. That's kind of the big thing that I found with this, with the Edinburgh. Again, because the only reason he would go that wide is because I know he's going to be utilizing the torpedoes, so I can go ahead and cut my engine power down in half there for a little bit till they go ahead and are spotted, and then I can readdress and go full speed, like as if nothing ever happened. Again, even more of a scarier sight. I'm looking down, the tri-barrels here of an Alaska, which again, the Alaska has 305s, the super heavy American armor piercing with that like nasty like impact angle that can go right into my Citadel, and he can just overmatch my 16mm nose. So I'm really trying to do my engine juking and rudder juking here as best of my abilities, and we're actually doing a pretty damn good job so far. Again, it isn't always going to be like this, guys. It depends on the caliber of player. It depends on RNG. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. This isn't just me being good at dodging. It's just I'm trying my best, and it so happened to be working out. So it's one of those things you can definitely get better at. But again, the second I find myself where I can't dodge shells, you can see he just goes ahead and basically 10Ks my nose. It's something that's going to happen, and the only safety net I have is my super heal. So I'm going to try to get this island in between me and especially the Alaska, but also the enemy ships from afar, the best of my ability. And again, we only take around 15 to 17,000 damage, which again, in my opinion, is a massive win to still be alive at this point. Again, I know he has radar, but my big concern is the enemy aircraft carrier spotting me to get cross shots from like the Alabama and plunging shots right into me. So I'm going to actually go ahead and smoke up, knowing that the Alaska is going to basically auto radar me. But again, when he pops radar, I think it takes 5 seconds till his ally can go ahead and see me, which again was a great change that Wargaming did a couple years back. They don't just get that instant radar deletion that happens almost, what used to happen almost all the time back in the day. So that is nice to see. Again, another threat I have is the Guten Lu with his 283s. Scharnhorst guns, essentially. Like, he can overmatch me as well. And he has those infamous Guten Lu airstrikes or whatever. So there's just a lot of different threats here. So thank God we take out the Alaska, and I'm basically still alive here. Again, this is one of those things, like, I find myself being aggressive in these ships, but, when you get to these upper tiers, you shouldn't be as aggressive until you can take ships one-on-one, and you can basically minimize the amount of ships that are shooting at you. Because if you are uber aggressive in this thing, especially early on, like I was saying with the Leander and Emerald down at tier 5 and 6, you will get deleted and you'll get sent back to port and get first blooded almost instantly. You cannot do that anymore. It no longer applies. You have to be conservative at first and play a little bit more passive. Again, you make sure you want to support your destroyers. That is essential. Getting up there with your radar, getting up there with your smoke screen, so you can dish out 12 rounds of the short fused AP into whatever target's going to show themselves. But again, we want to make sure that we're alive at the end of the day, because if we're dead, that essentially is hurting our team tremendously, and we do not want to do that. Yeah, so that's the first game. Again, it's one of those things, like, you really only saw me utilize my smoke one time, and that was early on in the game. After that, I was basically utilizing island coverage, which is why I was saying it's one of those things that I actually find myself yearning for radar more so than smoke. Anyways, as we move into game 2, we actually have a aircraft carrier, which again, you know how I feel about CVs, but again, I'm not gonna poo-poo them and say that, oh, they're terrible, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. Like, if you have a good aircraft carrier commander, you have to almost tip your hat, because it's definitely a class that requires some amounts of skill. And again, this whole game, how good you are at the game, it's going to reflect in your play no matter what class you are. I mean, yes, we complain about homing torpedoes. I'm not necessarily a fan of those. Yes, we complain about CVs. I understand that. I'm not the biggest fan either. But again, when we have a CV commander that knows what he's doing, and the biggest thing you can do as a CV is just spot and now support your allies with dropping fighters and whatnot, it is tremendously helpful, because essentially I didn't have to waste a radar charge here at this enemy Kiev, who aggressively pushed into, I guess, or tried to our spawn, and we were able to first blood him, which again was an awesome job to our CV, so well done to him. Again, one thing I really like to do, especially when I play my radar Edinburgh, is I really want to make sure I find an island and utilize that island to mitigate the amount of targets that can shoot at my ship, even if they saw me, because I was shooting at the Kiev, but I don't even think any of the enemy ships could theoretically shoot me because I was behind this island. If you can find situations like that, the Edinburgh is deadly, and not just the Edinburgh, but pretty much any supporting cruiser, light cruiser, heavy cruiser, whatever. Because at the end of the day, you are still a cruiser. And what do I mean with that? I say that in a lot of my videos. You are just a cruiser because we play a game called World of Battleships, and there are basically 5 battleships pretty much every damn game, which means your armor at some point in some tier will be getting overmatched, okay? No matter what. Even if you're angled, it doesn't matter. Battleships will point and click you, okay? Like this Yumahari. 410 millimeter guns. He has that high precision spotter plane, like, because this is the bungo line. So I have to tread with immense amount of caution because I can get absolutely one-shotted by this guy. I'm trying to utilize the enemy smoke screen, the Narai's smoke screen, to my advantage. But again, the smoke screen is going to be running out and he will be sailing out of it. So I will be exposed here any minute. And again, now I'm in a world of shit. So I have to be careful. I have to look where he's looking and make sure I pick my spots to see, okay, I can no longer use all 4 of my gun turrets. I'm going to have to try to go nose in and try to utilize this island to break line of sight. That is one of those things I think a lot of players, especially newer players, don't really understand yet. That even if I'm not shooting all of my guns, I am still contributing. But basically, it makes the ship that's firing at me, that can overmatch me. I'm a slimmer, smaller target, so it's harder for him to land shells more reliably and consistently on my ship. Yes, if he was, I don't know if he already had utilized his spotter plane gimmick, but if he utilized his spotter plane gimmick, pretty sure he could pinpoint all 4 shells into my citadel through my nose. It is possible. I'm not a big fan of the bungo line. I definitely don't think it is weak. Let me put it that way. But it's one of those things that we happen to get away with bloody murder, and we're still alive, which again is the most important thing of all this. We killed an enemy destroyer, and we are basically assisting in the destruction of this enemy Yamahari with basically all of our HP still intact. It is a huge tip that I can give you guys when not only playing cruisers, but especially playing your Edinburgh as well. It is one of those things that it's going to lead to you having longer games, more impactful games, and more consistent games, I think. Again, because of my short fused AP, I don't have HE. I just can't land on him and get a fire because I can't get fires. I have to pinpoint his superstructure or broadside. So you're going to see I'm doing, getting a couple shatters, a couple ricochets with a couple pens and overpens there. But the second he comes flat off the border, that's when I score my 5,000k salvos because I'm penning his deck armor plus his side belt armor. Well, not belt armor, but side plating, like upper deck or upper plating, my bad, side armor. So it's one of those things. Shot selection. Knowing how to aim in these things are going to be crucial. I've been saying it since the Emerald video. You're really going to have to pick your spots and know how to aim in these ships to really get the most out of them. Again, these ships really don't like shooting at enemy battleships because you don't have super fast reloads yet, where you can theoretically make up for that. You still only have a 7.5 second reload. Yes, you have 12 shells, but your hang time's pretty long, and the DPM is okay, but it's not phenomenal. It's good, but it's not phenomenal. Once we get to the Minotaur, when you have 2.8 second or whatever it is, that thing is insane amount of reload. Yeah, it's a little bit different because you're churning out so many damn shells that yes, you're theoretically going to be accumulating much more damage to those enemy ships, even if you're not necessarily pinpointing the superstructure. Because you have basically your 2 shells that hit now off of 1 turret and 4 other turrets coming in after it, plus 5 other reloading at max range of shells barraging the enemy target. Basically, the raining of short fused AP. Again, it's gonna make up for that weakness that is the short fused AP on certain targets of the ship. And I still find that applicable with the Neptune. The Neptune can still fire relatively fast, around 4.4 seconds or something like that. And it still has 12 shells. Another thing that you have noticed is, again, I'm being aggressive. We eliminated the enemy destroyer threat. We eliminated the enemy battleship threat. So right now, the only big threat to me is if the Narai or the San Diego gets my broadside, but last known location of the San Diego is he is running for dear life, and the Narai is pushing into the cap. And I see that he is smoking up. So I'm selfless. I'm a team player. I don't have shots in the Narai, but I know that my Nebraska and other ships will. So I go ahead and pop my radar to keep him detected for essentially 25 seconds for my team. Again, it's what I do. It's one of those things. I know this game isn't a team game, and that's the sad part because it really should be. But for those players that want it to be, you can make it that way. And especially because I know that we can get the Narai here, I went ahead and raided because now I made him leave his smoke screen and push around into me, where I can go ahead and get my turrets to bear, and I will score a double citadel on him. And I think the Nebraska or another ship, or maybe our CV, goes ahead and finishes off the deal here with the enemy Edinburgh. Yeah, it was our Amagi there. So awesome. It's one of those things, guys. I still recommend you do it. Again, I had 4 pops of my radar still. I really wasn't going to be using it anytime soon. No one really could dip off. No one's really sitting from stealth. And the Rye was the only thing close enough to me, and he was starting to smoke. To me, it's a no-brainer. I hope everyone in that situation will go ahead and do that as well for their allies. Again, you can't always rely on your allies. I understand that's like rule number one. Don't rely on your allies. But again, if I can help make their lives a little easier, I'm going to do that because I think it's going to lead to the overall success of the team. That's just who I am. Okay, going into, I guess, towards the later end of part of my video, so I guess I will start my final thoughts here because there's a lot to unpack, okay? And I want to start with this. Do I think the Edinburgh is a bad ship? No. I don't think the Edinburgh is a bad ship at all. Matter of fact, I actually think it's rather a good ship. The problem with the Edinburgh and the big glaring weakness with the Edinburgh is this. It is quite a long ship compared to like the previous ships of the Leander and the Fiji. So you're going to have, you know, to basically factor that into when doing your maneuvers and whatnot, that you're bigger, okay? That is the first thing. The second thing is you're at tier 8 now. And I already talked about this early on in the port analysis. Gimmicks are getting defined. Radar becomes more prevalent, so it really kind of neuters your smoke screen playing ability. You can still do it, again, if you have a good head on your shoulders. Utilize that mini-map. Again, my number one tip for all new players, intermediate players, any player, make sure you utilize that mini-map, guys. That thing can help you out so much, seeing last known enemy locations, especially if, you know, giving you last known what the enemy ship names, and make sure you know how to do that and turn that with the little gear icon in the upper right corner of the mini-map. Have those ship names on there so you could see the enemy ships on your mini-map. Oh, that was a Kansas of detection. Well, I just can't fly around the corner because he's going to have 12 406s aimed my way as well. Just things like that. And again, looking at your team, the enemy team lineup in the beginning of the battle, pinpointing, okay, this guy has radar, this guy could slot radar, this guy has deep water torpedoes, this guy has airstrikes. Knowing this information is only going to translate to a more effective gaming experience from you. And again, you have to tailor your gameplay depending on your consumable loadout. If I have a smoke screen, I'm going to play a little bit more conservative probably, and I'm going to let my DDs do the vast majority of the spotting, and again, go approach the cap with quarter speed until an ally has detected an enemy ship, or I get detected in return. If I have radar, I'm usually going to hum towards an island, get early cap coverage with my radar, and support my enemy destroyer, or sorry, my allied destroyer that way as well. Again, it's one of those things you're going to have to alter based upon your consumable loadout. Another big win for the Edinburgh is the addition of a super heal, and for me, this is absolutely necessary. You are a floating light cruiser, pretty much a glass cannon at times. You have to be careful, guys. Thank God you don't have a step citadel, but you do have a massive citadel, which means it can get absolutely penetrated not only by battleships, AP rocket planes, large battle cruisers, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, and even sometimes destroyers at super close range if they have big enough guns, like Klebears and Mogadors and stuff like that. So you can't just fly around broadside thinking, oh yes, this destroyer is mine, right? You can't do that anymore. Not that you ever could, but you really can't do that in these ships. You have to be careful and keep in mind and take heed to enemy gun calibers and your own citadel and your angling. You need to angle your armor as best you can. And no, before you ask, the ship does not get access to the Smolensk effect. If you know what the Smolensk effect is, that is the super lightly thinned armored citadel plating where it's so light that enemy battleship salvos and enemy salvos in general will go right through the citadel and overpen it, and you'll do no damage. No, this thing has definitely more than enough citadel plating where it will go ahead and eat tremendous amounts of citadels and damage. You have to be careful with that as well. And lastly, the big thing that I've noticed with the Edinburgh is the turret traverse is rather slow. But again, you take grease the gears, not like I didn't here, because again, I just went for a weird kind of build here. Take grease the gears. It's going to make your life a little bit easier, making sure that your guns are on target here a little bit more consistently, that I'm not having to pre-plan so far ahead my turrets where they're going, right? Positioning is always going to be key in this thing too. If you can abuse island coverage, and again, this is not just applicable to the Edinburgh, this is applicable to all cruisers and basically all ships in general. If you can abuse island coverage, definitely do so, because basically that's a one-way trade. I'm sacrificing no HP to take away HP from another ship. That is a massive win. You want to be doing that. And again, light cruisers do it very well. borderline frustrating, especially, you know, back in the day when people had to fight against like Cleveland, well, even now, fighting Cleveland sitting behind the island or Smolensk and stuff like that. Like, it is incredibly frustrating, especially in a large lumbering battleship where you can't shoot over the island, but gosh damn it, they can just send the Sea of HE at your way, right? And again, if you are utilizing smoke, do not just sit flat broadside in your smoke screen. You need to be going quarter speed up, quarter speed back. Stay mobile in your smoke screen, and make sure you're always utilizing your hydroacoustic search in your smoke screen as well, because we don't want to be eating a face full of torpedoes and giving us an early exit off of something we knew we had a counter to and we could get early warning from. The last thing I do want to give you a heads up on is, because you have the improved acceleration on this thing, it is something you got to get used to, because if you just go half speed or you gun it, full gun it, and then you hit the brakes right away, you will still drift out of your smoke and your island coverage, and then ships have basically a one-way ticket to your citadel and your good night Jim Kite. So make sure you keep that in mind. It's kind of something I featured in my legendary Des Moines guide. It's the same kind of thing. You have to get a feel for it. Don't always gun it full engine, full speed in your smoke or around islands, because you can definitely accelerate 50% quicker, but you can't necessarily decelerate 50% quicker. So it's one of those things that it can help you out and get you out of a pinch, but also it can theoretically be a double-edged sword and get you killed. So you want to be careful of that. Both these games were E ranks. Again, what does E rank mean? Pretty much nothing. But I want to make sure that I showcased good games for you guys. You get like the full picture of what this ship is capable of doing. And as you know, I'm kind of indifferent on the Edinburgh. I like her at times, I hate her at times, but such is life. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and night, and peace out.